seated. It's a baptism Sunday. Did you get that yet? There is a baptism scene in the film, Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?, in which 3 escaped convicts, Ulysses Everett McGill, Pete Hogwallop, and Delmer O'Donnell, are sitting one afternoon in the woods eating gopher on a stick near a river. And they are plotting out how to get to a treasure of cash that Pete has stashed in a field. Through the woods, a congregation of people all dressed in white come walking. They are all lined up, going toward the nearby river to be baptized. The men follow, and Delmer, seeing the people one after another, letting the preacher take them underwater and bring them out again, runs, splashing through the water to have his turn. Delmer gives himself to the preacher and is submerged in the muddy water. When he comes to the surface again, he is wide-eyed, sucking in air, gulping like he can't take in all that has happened to him. Then he calls to his friends on the bank and he says, I have been redeemed. The preacher washed away all my transgressions, including the Piggly Wiggly that I knocked over in Yazoo. Heaven everlasting is my reward. Ulysses says, come on, Delmer, we've got bigger fish to fry. And Delmer said, man's got nothing on me. Come on in, boys. This water is fine. We are into the year of the Gospel of Matthew in the church. So if you're new to this way, this Episcopal thing, we read the Bible, the Common Lectionary, and other denominations do it too. We read the Bible through, most of it, in 3 years, in a 3-year cycle. Year A, which we are in now, generally we do the Gospel of Matthew. Year B, the Gospel of Mark. Year C, the Gospel of Luke. We just finished up year C. We're starting over in year A. The Gospel of John gets sprinkled through all of them. So since Advent, we've moved through the first 3 chapters of the Gospel of Matthew, and a lot happens there. You get the genealogy of Jesus. We are told where Jesus has come from, who his people are. If you're from the South, that's how we think about that. Then we are given the birth account. Then the wise people enter. Then the family escapes to Egypt because it happens. What was rumored to happen and what was feared, the slaughter of the innocent. And so then the family settles in Nazareth. Then Matthew introduces a new character. Now, it's a literary device. When you're reading a novel and you get into it good and there's a new character that tells you that something's about to happen. Something shifted in the plot line. In this case, the character is John the Baptizer. He is in the wilderness and people are flocking to him because he says, there is something coming. It is a new way and it will save you. It will make all the difference. John's new thing is not a new road. This new way John has, something cut in the hard earth back to Jerusalem. He is speaking of a way of being, a new way of being, and it all hinges on this thing of baptism. Come on in, the water is fine. John the Baptist did not think up the ritual of baptism. It was not his idea. Ritual bathing is as old as ritual itself. Water is a great symbol of passage in every major religion. This doesn't belong to us. We share it. Our Jewish forebears practiced purification rituals, for example, mivka, or purification by water. It was required when one had come in contact with the dead. So you had to wash and purify yourself before you returned to the temple. John the Baptist took the ritual and asked the people to themselves die. You must die. Therefore, you need this ritual bath to come into the new thing. You need this ritual bath to be reborn, because something in you's got to die and something is to be reborn if you want to enter. Thomas Merton called it giving up the self with a little s, so you can get to the self with the big S, the true self. Water that can do that is a really good bath. What is understood from our earliest documents from archaeology is that in the earliest churches, as the faithful were just making sense of the event of Jesus Christ, the first thing that happened when people wanted to gather in these communities of people was baptism. It was the first thing that happened. Before they were taught anything, they were baptized. Nothing was required. Baptism was not a graduation, right? Something you achieved once you knew certain things and met certain requirements. Baptism was not a rite imparted once a person received a particular spiritual status. It's what brought you in. It was later in the 4th century, after Constantine stamped Christianity with the blessing of the Holy Roman Empire, that the church increasingly had standards for itself. So the creeds were developed. And with it, something called the catechism. If you were Catholic, that might ring more of a bell for you. The Episcopal version of the catechism is in the back of the Red Book of Common Prayer, so you're all sitting very close to the catechism. And the Episcopal Church is called an outline of the faith. In the 4th century, baptism was postponed. It was no longer just what happened when you got there. It was postponed. And the unbaptized were separated from the baptized until they studied. So this is generally how it went down. On the eve of baptism, catechumens, the people who were studying, recited the creed to demonstrate their knowledge of the faith. And at dawn, during a vigil, the catechumens were then taken into a baptistry where a bishop consecrated water. The catechumens disrobed. Follow that. Then they renounced the devil. Follow that. And then they confessed the Trinity. Then they were immersed in a font, generally in the ground, kind of like a hot tub, except the water was intentionally cold. Wake up to what you're doing. Then they were anointed with oil, dressed in white robes, and invited to join the baptized congregation for the Easter service. Different ways of doing it, but the essence of baptism was always the same. It was an initiation rite, as in the root of the word, to begin. You're beginning something with this baptism. Baptism is meant to initiate something in us. Come on in, boys, the water is fine. In O Brother, Where Art Thou?, the people lining up for baptism are singing what is an old song, made famous by Alison Krauss, traced back to African slaves. I would sing it, but I don't like to sing alone. Are you going to sing it with me? Yes? Okay. I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Dear Lord, show me the way. Oh, brother, let's go down. Let's go down, come on down. Oh, brothers, let's go down down in the river to pray. I hope Russell is impressed with us. The good old way to the river Jordan for Jesus. And here is the thing about a river. It flows into something bigger. It flows us into something bigger. Jesus has come to the Jordan River, and he's moving to something bigger. And he has two encounters in that moment of baptism. The first is he comes to John, and John says, I need to be baptized by you're the thing that's coming. And Jesus says, no, I will be baptized by you, John. Let it be so. This is a human moment for Jesus. He needs his brother. Jesus is full on human in that moment. Walk with me, John, because I'm going down into the water and I'm going to come back up. I need you to walk with me there. It's a human moment. John is his companion in the death that baptism asks of him. A death so that the Christ might be born in Jesus, a death to one life that he might enter another one more fully. Jesus, too, had to do that work. John was his anamkara, his soul friend, as he walked away from a self with a little s into a self with the big one. Because baptism is choosing another way. Lord, show me the way. Jesus is baptized, and just as he comes up from the water, suddenly the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. The gospel does not say that the Spirit alighted on Jesus. It says that Jesus saw the Spirit alight on him. Jesus was awake to what was happening to him. There is an encounter with the Spirit of God in baptism, and Jesus is wide-eyed and conscious of it. This is what baptism is about. The consciousness of your life, living it consciously. A vow that you will live not as a self with a little s, but the true self. Spirit of God, come upon you. So here's a point of theology. At our birth, we are God's own. Created good, we cannot shake that. But in our baptism, we walk into the reality of that. We take up the mantle of that reality. We live it. We commit that we will consciously recognize and hold oneness with God as the central thing of our life. We know there is a force come upon us, and we will live into that. It's like the television set at my house. It's there, and it's big, and it's really, really close. You can't miss it if you walk in the room. But to turn it on is another thing altogether. Because the last time I counted, there were 4 remotes that worked that thing. Baptism means that you will engage the remotes of your faith, that you will learn how this thing works, that you will stream something from beyond into the living room of your faith and life. This is Epiphany. At this baptism, we are invited to awaken these souls to the baptism that was maybe done for us, but in the spirit that we would awaken to it. We are asked to turn on the lights of our faith, to be conscious of what this all means. It is what the prayer book means when it says, and we will say here in a minute, Declan Greeno, you are marked as Christ's own forever. It means we live the marking of Christ. My friends, the water is fine. And if you let it, it will wake up your soul. John O'Donohue says about this waking up thing, once the soul awakens, the search begins. And you can never go back. You are inflamed with a special longing that will never let us linger in the lowlands. Eternity makes us urgent. Baptism is an urgency for the divine. Many people don't remember their baptism. I do, because it was a big old bathtub at the front of a Baptist church, and I was 12. Some of us were infants or young children, but the church is very good about remembering our baptism for us. This church certainly has one of the most beautiful fonts around, and you can't come into the door of the church without negotiating it. That is by design in many liturgical churches. You walk into the doors of the church and you are confronted with your baptism. You can't walk in the doors of our church, except when we're having a baptism, then we let you in easier. But normally you cannot walk through those doors and walk straight in here. You have to walk around that font. You've got to navigate it. On the days of baptism, we spread the water of baptism, the water that was sprayed around here, asperged, the water asperged on people, comes from the font. You are showered in the water of baptism. And every so often, as we will today, we renew our baptismal vows. We say again what we vowed or what was vowed for us, that we will live consciously the life of faith. So there were some birds from St. James that went to the Holy Land last year. And when they got back, one little bird left a brown bag on my desk. And inside it was a little jar of water from the Jordan River, exactly where Jesus was baptized in our gospel today. And so I've been hoarding that water for a baptism. And it's dropped into that water, some of it. I'm hoarding it also for Easter. But it's dropped into that font. That is what baptism is. It is, we are drawn, time stops because eternity comes in. The human and the divine are connected. Time and eternity are connected. Our font here is connected with the font of the Jordan River. It's all one. The divine is in you as your birthright. You were born with the light of God in you. Your baptism is your covenant to live the God born in you. Your covenant to God, your covenant to your community, and your covenant to your own heart. The water is so fine. So fine. Amen.